Good evening. Staff at Jardine Aviation Services, which offers ground support to dozens of airlines, are threatening industrial action. They are demanding a 20% pay rise and shorter working hours. Danielle Tran reports.
Jardine Aviation Services provides ground support for airlines, ranging from assigning seats to making final checks of passengers before boarding. The company handles about 20% of the flights in and out of Hong Kong. A union group represents about a third of the firm's 1,000 workers. The union is unhappy with what it calls long working hours and low pay. Members voted today overwhelmingly to give the union the power to decide whether to take industrial action. Union spokesman Fu Ka Lok said they will consider a work stoppage of 1 or 2 hours or even halting all services at airport express stations. The date and duration of any action has not yet been decided, pending talks with management on Thursday.
We will announce to the public later on, because we need to just negotiate with the company at 27th.
The union says overtime pay makes up most of their pay and that the company has not adjusted that for years. And increases in basic salary, they say, have failed to catch up with inflation. They are demanding a 20% increase in their basic salaries. They also want staff to be allowed to decide for themselves whether they wish to work 7 days in a row. And if they are to work 1 week non-stop, they want an increase in allowances as well as a 12-hour break in between shifts. The union says many staff only have a couple of days off a month. And because there's often no set meal hours, some of them might have to go an entire evening with no time to eat at all. Passengers are divided on what they think of possible industrial action.
People have a livelihood and they should have good conditions that they're working in and fair pay and so forth.
I would be concerned that the flights would be delayed, and I think the primary focus should be convenience of the passengers.
Frequent travellers will now be watching closely for the outcome of Thursday's meeting. Danielle Tran, TVB News.
In other labour news now, local companies are likely to give pay rises of between 4.5 and 5.1% next year, according to the findings of a recent survey. That's slightly higher than the pay increases over the past year. Jenny Lam reports.
For many people, economic recovery means inflation, but are wages catching up? It's tough, this man says. A lot of prices have gone up. Food, transport and rent. I think many people are already waiting for their next paycheck by the 3rd week of the month, he complains. Between July and September, 92 companies responded to a survey carried out by the Hong Kong People Management Association in conjunction with Baptist University. The firm said they granted pay increments of between 4.2 and 4.9% over the past year. Next year, the increases are expected to be slightly higher, ranging from 4.5 to 5.1%. Felix Yip of Baptist University School of Business said the introduction of the minimum wage has made certain jobs more sought after than others. And since the minimum wage of $28 an hour took effect in May, about a third of the firms surveyed offered their low-ranking staff an average pay rise of 5.2%. Those in property management have benefited the most. Their average wages went up by 10%. The study also found that 80% of the companies polled gave out bonuses equivalent to 1.2 to 2.4 months' wages over the past year. Jenny Lam, TVB News.
More now on yesterday's landmark court ruling in the battle over the late tycoon Nina Wang's fortune. There are now concerns that her 2002 will be difficult to execute. The Court of Final Appeal yesterday dismissed Tony Chan's application for leave to appeal in the case involving the late Nina Wang's estate. Today, the feng shui master refused to respond to questions raised by journalists. Wang's 2002 will now prevails, with her 2006 will, which would leave her entire fortune to Chan, ruled invalid. The 2002 will named Chinacam Charitable Foundation as the sole beneficiary of Wang's estate. Under that document, she outlined plans for an Asian version of the Nobel Prize Awards, as well as proposals to support a variety of good causes. Wang also expressed hopes for the foundation to be supervised by an authority comprising the Secretary General of the United Nations, the Premier of the People's Republic of China, and the Chief Executive of Hong Kong. She also wanted the foundation's board of directors to safeguard the interests of Chinacam Group and to do what it takes to continue expanding its business empire. Because Wang made clear she wanted the government to oversee the operation of Chinacam Charitable Foundation, lawmaker and lawyer Paul Tse has urged the Legislative Council to discuss the issue. Clearly, Wang intended to hold the foundation accountable to the public. That means the fund will not be privately owned, and there's a need for its operation to be carefully monitored, Tse said. He added that the foundation would have to tread a fine line as it tries to strike a balance between carrying out charity work and boosting the bottom line of Chinacam Group. Chinacam Charitable Foundation and the Secretary for Justice have not yet revealed details on how the foundation will be run and regulated in future. Over to Thailand now, where the death toll from catastrophic flooding has risen to 366. Sonia Artero reports.
Although most of Bangkok remains dry, thousands of residents battle to cope with waist-high floodwaters. Military vehicles are being provided because finding transport is proving difficult in flooded areas where people were forced to abandon usual methods of cycling or walking. Residents in northwestern Bangplat district were warned to move their belongings to higher ground after the Chao Phraya River swelled and left their homes submerged. The same problem is facing Bangkok's Don Mueang Airport, where floodwaters breach airport barriers, forcing budget carrier Nok Air to suspend operations. While this national disaster has taken a toll on the Thai people, its trail of destruction is crippling the country economically. At least 5 major industrial estates north of Bangkok have been forced to suspend operations, leaving an estimated 700,000 people out of work. Upon surveying the aftermath of flooded factories such as Cadbury, Johnson & Johnson, and Honda, one investment professional advises investors to build outside the flooded zone.
This has shut down a significant amount of Thailand's historical industrial heart north of Bangkok. Road infrastructure, industrial, manufacturing plants are shut down. It's a serious economic disaster as well as a national disaster.
The crisis has put Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra to the test. Her government has come under fire for not having a plan to prevent the ravaging floodwaters. She appealed to foreign investors not to lose confidence, saying Thailand has a plan to solve future flooding problems. Sonia Artero, TVB News.
The Hong Kong government has issued the red travel alert for flood-ravaged areas in Thailand. The Travel Industry Council says all Hong Kong tourists who are currently in Thailand are safe. However, a number of travel agencies, including Hong Thai, Wing On, and EGL Tours, have cancelled their Bangkok-bound tours from tomorrow until November 1st. More than 1,500 potential holidaymakers are being affected. Those in need of assistance are urged to call the Immigration Department's hotline on 1868. Overseas now, an aftershock with a magnitude of 5.4 shook Turkey's southeast province of Van today, 2 days after a powerful earthquake hit the region, killing at least 432 people. But a handful of survivors have also been found. A 2-week-old baby girl, her mother and grandmother were pulled alive from the rubble of an apartment building in a dramatic rescue today. Television footage showed a rescuer in an orange jumpsuit squeezing into the hulk of a crushed concrete and metal to free the baby. The infant was wrapped in a blanket and handed over to a medic amid a scrum of media and applauding emergency workers. Talks between the United States and North Korea in Geneva have ended on a positive note, but no agreement was reached. The U.S. envoy leading talks with North Korea on Pyongyang's nuclear program says 2 days of meetings have narrowed differences between the two sides. But Stephen Bosworth said today that no agreement was reached on formally resuming negotiations, either bilaterally or in the so-called 6-party format that also includes China, Japan, Russia, and South Korea. Meanwhile, North Korean leader Kim Jong-il told visiting Chinese Vice Premier Li Keqiang that Pyongyang hopes the 6-party talks on the country's nuclear issue could be resumed as soon as possible, with the terms of a 2005 deal being the starting point. The bodies of former Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi and his son Mu'tasim have been buried at a secret location somewhere in the Sahara Desert. A small convoy of cars believed to be carrying the bodies left Misrata under the cover of darkness early this morning to an undisclosed location. Libya's new Western allies are becoming increasingly uneasy about reports of summary execution and even abuse of the corpses by revolutionary fighters. The interim government had put the bodies on public display in a commercial freezer at a damaged supermarket in Misrata. The issue of Palestinian statehood dominated a United Nations Security Council meeting yesterday. They're now mustering support for a November 11th vote. Israel, meantime, made clear key outstanding issues need to be addressed first.
We will not enter into negotiations for the sake of negotiations. The situation on the ground and the two-state solution itself are too fragile to withstand further delays and sabotage.
The Palestinian leadership is calling for an independent Palestinian state, but insists that their own people return to the Jewish state. It's a proposition that no one who believes in the right of Israel to exist could accept. The so-called right of return equals the destruction of the state of Israel.
Now back locally, more union groups have come out against giving foreign domestic helpers permanent residency status, but critics insist their concerns have been overblown. Philippa Stewart has more.
Protesting on Sunday. Last month's court ruling in favour of a foreign domestic helper being allowed to apply for permanent residency status has divided the community. The Court of First Instance ruled that it was unconstitutional to bar helpers from applying for permanent residency like all other expats. Today, local workers were once again making noise against that judgment, which they say could open the floodgates for domestic helpers to apply for other jobs. These unionists represent workers in the hotel, catering and tourism sectors. They're worried those better educated domestic helpers with a good command of English will take their jobs. But some are saying that this is just scaremongering and that opponents are overestimating the number of those who would apply for residency.
Here in Hong Kong, you need to pay the water, everything you pay. In Philippines, it's all free. So I don't interested to have the residential here.
There have been a spate of related court cases in recent months. The government is appealing against the ruling of the first case, which will be heard tomorrow. The judge in the second case is still considering the verdict. The third and final court case brought by foreign domestic helpers will be heard by the High Court tomorrow. In the meantime, the Immigration Department isn't processing any applications for permanent residency from foreign domestic helpers. Philippa Stewart, TVB News.
Secretary for Food and Health York Chow says the mechanism that handles medical blunders at public hospitals should apply to private hospitals as well. A newborn baby was dropped on the floor at Baptist Hospital earlier this month, raising questions on how private hospitals should be held accountable for their mistakes. Chow said today that existing regulations do not give health authorities the power to penalize private hospitals. He said the move to bring in new regulations should take into consideration factors such as public expectations, acceptance by private hospitals, and ways to ensure they are on par with public hospitals in terms of medical standards, quality of service, and accountability. In sports, Formula One is going to an unlikely place. Officials are set to announce a 2013 Grand Prix race in the blue-collar U.S. state of New Jersey. This week, F1 is in New Delhi for the inaugural Grand Prix of India. Red Bull's Sebastian Vettel has already wrapped up the Drivers' Championship, but a lot of attention will go to another competitor. HRT's Narain Karthikeyan will become the first Indian to race in front of the home fans. And tonight's winning Mark 6 numbers are 17, 22, 26, 27, 29, and 35. The extra number is 44. Finally, the weather. It will be mainly cloudy. There'll be a few rain patches and rather low visibility overnight. And the outlook, sunny periods with slightly cooler mornings. And that's news. Good night.